I'd like to begin by we, the Greater Shepparton City Council, begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Item number 2, which is our privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item number 3, apologies. Do we have any apologies tonight? No, full house. Item number 4, do we have any councillors that have a conflict of interest that needs to be declared tonight at this meeting? No. Item number 5, the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Is any item of the minutes opposed? No. Would a councillor please like to move the recommendation?
Yeah, happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Adam. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Item number 6, public question time. Mr Teitzel, we have some questions tonight.
We do. We have two questions from Mr John Gray. So I'll read out the first question. Earlier this month, 2 mature contiguous Plantanus aricifolia, otherwise known as London plane, street trees worth thousands of dollars on the east side of Corio Street, south of Corio Avenue and north of Knight Street were completely felled and removed, leaving only residue stumps of only several centimetres high in the nature strip by unknown persons. As the trees mentioned were in a street expressly included in the heritage overlay of the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme, HO128, in the nature strip fronting a residence with adjoining HO141, surely a planning permit would be required even if the council itself removed the trees in question. Can you supply the details surrounding this issue and any consequential actions that may be being pursued? In answer to this question, the 2 trees referred to in the question were removed following an inspection by council. These trees were assessed as not viable to remain in the environment due to their very poor health, and along with their internal structural issues, presented an immediate risk of failure. Council's planning department inspected the site with the heritage advisor, and it was determined that the removal did not require a planning permit on the basis that the trees presented an immediate risk of personal injury or damage to property. The trees will be replaced with like-for-like species. In the second question, bearing in mind that now is the optimal seasonal time for planting deciduous shade trees, and also noting a dearth of appropriate deep shading large canopy specimen trees throughout the popular lawned eastern surrounds of Victoria Lake, in the increasingly harsh summer days, could this opportunity be taken to arrest the apparent last decade of inaction in this respect? The trees for Victoria Park Lake are to be planted in line with the SAM Master Plan. Council is currently in the final stages of this year's planting program and is installing approximately 1,500 new street and park trees across the municipality in accordance with the Council's urban forest strategy as part of this program. Planting of trees at and adjacent to the SAM site are being coordinated with the building works. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr Teitzel. Councillors will now go to page 2, item 7.1, Seniors Festival Grants for 2019. The recommendations are on page 2 and page 3. Would a council please like to move a motion? Councillor Giovanetti?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be happy to move the recommendation as a motion on pages 2 and 3 of our agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I think it's great that we are able to assist our seniors by providing some grant monies for the various programs. And just looking through the recommended projects, there's a wide cross-section right throughout the municipality which are going to gain benefit from this grant process. And I think as a senior legally now, I think it's great that we're able to provide assistance to these various groups to support the seniors in our community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, Madam Mayor, those that aren't legally seniors are becoming legal very soon, believe me. And it's really good. It's very important to keep active in the community, and this goes a long way towards that, getting people that are getting to that age where they might be slowing down. There's opportunities here for them to get out and about and start new, the third age generation. And they're really good groups that can really make a difference to people's lives as they get older, so I thoroughly recommend.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 7, item 7.2, the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee membership appointments. The recommendation is also on page 7. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I'd like to move the recommendation on page 7 as the motion that the Council endorse the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee membership applications for the below for a 2-year term effective from 16 July 2019 and expiring on 19 July 2021. Sajil Amin, Diane Baglin, Tracy Spivey, Ronnie Druitt, Cindy Hansford, Andrea Polk, and Lauren Barker. Also, that Council thank Fran Smullen, Belinda Wood, and Angela MacLeod for their significant contributions to the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just quickly, that it is again, it's very pleasing to see that for 7 vacant positions this year we got 18 applicants. It's great to see, and the good mix of new and existing members would bring much needed sort of diversity and knowledge to the forum. And I would like to thank the outgoing members, Belinda, Angela, and Fran, for their significant contributions, and they have always been they were very active in the working groups and bringing events to our to Greater Shepparton related to this this advisory committee forum. In particular, I would like to say special thanks. I would like to say that Fran, thank you so much. Fran was one of the founding members of this committee, and she has played an amazing role in lifting the committee's profile through her ideas, through her work, through her networks, and through the knowledge and understanding of why women need to have this kind of skill development forum. So thank you so much for to Fran, and I look forward to seeing the new members on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah. I'll just say a few words, although Seema said some of them too. The committee had 7 vacancies and 18 applicants, which is a testament to the importance of this committee to the women of Greater Shepparton. Its work in promoting women's participation in all levels of leadership should be applauded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 10, item 8.1, extension of terms of the Shepparton Show Me Committee members. We do need to note a change which will be up on the screen as far as the recommendation goes. Would the council please like to move a motion? Councillor Zavari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the amended recommendation that the Council extends the terms of the following Shepparton Show Me Committee members, effective from the 16th of July of 2019, expiring on the 30th of September 2019. Andrew Pogue, Christina Marco, Simon Katrocki and Helen Sofra.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Zavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Essentially, this is an extension of 2 months of the committee membership, and it's to bring it in line with our annual general meeting. One of the other reasons is there's a number of bits of Shepparton Show Me marketing plan is being discussed, and we want to have it implemented and put in place before the next election comes up. So if we weren't able to, that would mean that essentially we would have enough committee members to be able to pass that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to
No,
the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 13, item 8.2, request to register the Municipal Association Victoria, known as MAV, the contract MS433-2017, provision for local government Microsoft licensing solution partner panel. The recommendation is also on page 13. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Giovannitti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be pleased to move the recommendation as a motion on page 13, that the Council accept the Municipal Association Victoria contract and their number, provision for Victorian local government Microsoft licensing solution partner panel for a total outlay not exceeding 1.1 million over 3 years, and authorise the CEO to sign and seal the contract documentation.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Giovannitti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a new contract with the MAV. Obviously, the MAV take these contracts out to tender on Council's behalf. I just wish 20 years ago I had the nous to buy some Microsoft shares, and it would have been very nice, just considering if we're paying out this and every other municipality's probably paying somewhere similar. It's a lot of money to that company, but it's the best way for us as a council to go. We enter into a lot of contracts that MAV procure for us as an industry, and I think it's certainly the best way to go and gives best value for money.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannitti. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 15, item 8.3, the procurement policy review. The recommendation is also on page 15. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Summer.
There's a recommendation that the Council adopt version 5.0 of the procurement policy 13.POL1.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
The policy that we review every 12 months, and that's a requirement under the Act, it shows that our tenders are not all about just price alone. There's significant economic impact on large tenders such as environmental flow-on, social flow-on, financial flow-on, so there's a responsibility around how we purchase things, and these include provisions for local content and environmental impact, so I'm quite happy with them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Councillor Summers covered it very well, thank you.
Very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 18, item 8.4, the reappointment of the Chief Executive Officer. The recommendation is also on page 18. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation as a motion that's printed on page 18 of the agenda.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam.
Second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Very much. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, if it's successful, this motion will bring to an end a statutory process that's been in place for quite some time, and it's the Council following the provisions of the Act if seeking to reappoint the CEO in the last 6 months of a current contract. At this corresponding meeting back in June, the Council resolved its intention to reappoint the Chief Executive Officer, and as was required, a public notification process was undertaken with an ad appearing in the Shepparton News and on the Council website. So all that has been complied with, and the process is now coming to culmination. If successful, this motion will also involve the signing of a new contract, the terms of which have been negotiated and agreed. So it's been quite a lengthy process. It's been quite a comprehensive process of interaction between us and our CEO.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazeman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
No. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Ozavari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity. The appointment of a CEO is a tremendously important decision, arguably one of the most important that councillors as a council can make. For council, he is the only employee we have the responsibility for directly employing. Given the importance of such, we must be totally convinced that he's the best person for the job. In order to reach that conclusion, we have the opportunity to reflect on the past 4 years of service to this community. What sort of job has he done? What sort of job has he done is probably the starting point for any conversation in this space. Has he done an exemplary job? Has he done a very good job? Or has he been satisfactory? If the answers to these first two questions had have been in the affirmative, then the recommendation as put to councillors tonight would have in reality been a foregone conclusion and made the decision for me very easy. However, given my view that he falls within the parameters of a satisfactory job, then I was more than comfortable with the discussion of putting the position out to expressions of interest. Some of my colleagues around this table expressed a view that this would send the wrong message to the incumbent. Yes, it may have, but it also would send the message that we have very high standards and expectations, and moreover, demonstrate to the community whom we represent that we are forever looking at improvement and advancement when only the best will do. Further, that if there's a reasonable possibility that after 4 years of opportunity to steer Greater Shepparton City Council, have we really advanced that far? Has the change been dramatic? Are we in a much better place? In my assessment, those 4 years have been steady as she goes. Now, there's nothing wrong with that attitude in principle, but for mine that can lead to a certain degree of complacency, and complacency can lead to staleness, and we can be marking time. Greater Shepparton has great potential. As a region, it is being thrust headlong into the situation of continued and sustained growth, a place of the future, if we can manage expectation with reality. There are challenges aplenty, some easy, some difficult, progressive and dynamic, strategic, big picture ideas where things happen, making tough decisions, taking the bit between the teeth and sometimes making unpopular decisions is what this role of a CEO is about, being supportive of councillors to try something different. All of us sitting in this chamber have the best interests of the community uppermost in our minds, not least myself. And so for mine, while I suspect what the outcome will be, I felt it important to express my view that there is nothing wrong with challenging the status quo for a potentially better outcome. You have to aim high at all times. I might add that the appointment of the CEO is not a popularity contest, and nor do I suggest that any of my colleagues here have considered it in that light. But it is a process nonetheless that demands serious consideration about the best person for a job, a person who will lead and who we will follow. The fact that the successful applicant, I'd ask for a little bit more time if I could.
Everyone happy for an extension of time? Granted.
Thank you. The fact that the successful applicant is personable is an added bonus. In the course of my ruminating over this agenda item, I caused to reflect on some statistics regarding CEOs in general and the Victorian landscape of local government. I was made aware that Bendigo recently reappointed its CEO after advertising, and he was reappointed. This to me is a demonstration of the preparedness of a council to test the waters and see what's out there. Over the past 5 years, Victoria's 79 councils have had a total of 134 individuals as CEOs. 9 councils, or 11%, have had 3 CEOs in the last 5 years. Since the beginning of 2017, 36 councils, or roughly 45%, have had a change of CEOs. What these figures serve to illustrate is that change is not a concept to be afraid of, and if performance is average, then serious consideration should be given to test the waters. In summary, my biggest disappointment is the opportunity was missed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zavari. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Giovannetti.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would probably dispute Councillor Zavari's suggestion that complacency, that a continuation of the new contract leads to complacency. I think it's up to us as councillors, as the CEO's employer, to ensure that the KPIs that we set for the CEO are at a standard to ensure that complacency is not part of the overall performance appraisal. I think that we as a group have indicated that we will be far more stringent in how we develop the KPIs into the future for this new contract for the CEO. And I think, again, it's up to us as our only employee, it's up to us to ensure that the KPIs are met and therefore the CEO is doing the job that we require.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giabinetti. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Summer?
I tend to agree with Councillor Osvari on some things. I'm not entirely convinced either that it's been a lacklustre journey, because there have been a few initiatives led by the CEO. Some I agree with, like the urban forest strategy, and some I don't necessarily. I might mention we do have faith in the CEO. He's currently off training overseas right now at Harvard because we moved to upskill this man, which is healthy. But I do like to keep our options open. We were a little late in developing these KPIs and we haven't had time to assess them yet, and we can't assume that just because we set KPIs the CEO is going to follow them. He is a relatively new CEO who may still be finding his feet. He could actually be an exceptional CEO, but I think it's certainly helpful to keep our options open. Opposing this motion does not result in substantial consequences at all, because we can move it again right up to the point of the CEO's appointment in January. But an expression of interest will also not negatively impact the organisation either in terms of moving forward. So I will oppose the motion but keep my mind open in terms of moving forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Summer. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, it's surprising. It does really go to show you how people look at different things different ways. I've certainly found Peter a pleasure to work with if you want to work with him, and I have wanted to work with him on things like the Murray-Darling Basic Plan, River Connect. Can't do enough for you. Right? So I think a lot of the times it's council not having an input into what they want to happen, rather than sitting back and complaining about things, about someone being booked too long, staying at a parking meter, which to me is should be past that. We should be all working as a team to progress. And that's what I believe I've been doing, and I believe Peter's given me great support doing that. And I know in other things he's supported others. The concerns about putting it out, re-advertising it, I think Bendigo's CEO's been there 12 years, 14 years, or something like that. Well, yeah, I'd probably support having a look around. I think Campaspe learnt the hard way. Maybe if you're not 100% happy, let's put it out and see what's there. Well, he sent straight away, I'm not happy here anymore, he's out of there. Now they're lost in no man's land. I think it's been a great first 4 years of Peter's CEO governance here, and there's been lots of issues. He hasn't picked up a clean baton, so to speak, and he's worked very well. And I totally support the reappointment of him.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Sutton?
I agree with Les, as you probably all know, and I would have liked to seen the contract put out just to see what was out there. Not to say that Peter's done a bad job, but I think some of the things he could do better. So, I would have liked to see it put out there so we could have had a look around and seen what else was available, or who else was available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sutton. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah?
I would just like to say that in terms of Peter's performance, I think we had all, as a group of councillors, we had done the assessment, and I think the biggest contribution has been the stability, the much needed stability that the organisation needed, and Peter has done a remarkable job in the first term. Yes, there are areas of improvement, but in terms of just going to advertise and ask for expression of interest, I think we were sort of putting that stability at risk, because we needed to, once we have confidence in Peter or in the CEO who was doing a job and providing the leadership and building the trust and confidence of the councillors and staff and the community, the next appropriate action was to give him the time to now, having based on this foundation of stability, do other things, do higher, achieve higher targets that we have set for him. So on the basis of this rationale, I had, and I will totally endorse this recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hazeman, would you like your right of reply?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I hear the argument about change for change's sake, but not necessarily supported by any empirical data. You know, we heard a lot about statistics, and the statistics probably indicated more about the volatility of the sector, if not instability of the sector, and the performance of CEOs. What doesn't come with those statistics, though, is any measure of performance. Has that performance been negative or positive as a result of the change? So that's just a matter of pure speculation that anything in there has been positive. The clear responsibility of the council, though, from here is to set clear key performance indicators linked to an annual appraisal process. And that's probably an area that we've been a little bit deficient in the past. We haven't had clarity of purpose, clarity of direction, and a clear expectation of what needed to be achieved. Most of our performance indicators in the past have been fairly broad, and so I think there's a responsibility to fall back onto the council now to tighten that process. You know, if you look around at some of the bare brush indicators that might be out there, we asked Peter to address issues around our ask of government. We've seen significant levels of commitment of government funding coming into the municipality in the last, say, 12 months. Again, an indicator of how broad our KPIs are. It's difficult to attribute those directly to Peter's involvement, although his advocacy role has been strong. But quite clearly he would indicate that an area that we asked him to focus on has clearly been achieved. There has been substantial increase in government funding. The other area I'm sure that if he was, and he has done, has pointed to this, is since his appointment, the very steadily increase in the customer satisfaction surveys on an annual basis in rating of the performance of this council. The other indicator I would look at is that coming in after a period of, well, let's call it unsettlement preceding his appointment, Peter has worked very, very hard to form the relationship with the council as a group, and I think that's reflected in some of the community responses and some of the regard with which the council is now held by the community that probably wasn't there previously. And he needs to be, his role in that needs to be acknowledged. Now, it's not going to be all plain sailing, and there's going to be occasions when councillors as individuals and us as a group, we're going to have disagreements with our CEO. That's the nature of the beast, as determined by the Act. And as was pointed out earlier, he's the one employee that we actually engage. Everybody else in the organisation is employed by the CEO, but he bears the responsibility for their performance as well. So I think the process we've been through has been good. Yes, we could have gone to a re-advertising process, and that has not worked out particularly well for a number of councils that have gone down that path.
Would you like an extension? Everyone's happy for an extension granted?
Yeah. Evidence has been provided that that hasn't been a satisfactory process where it's been undertaken elsewhere, and it would send a very strong message again to the community of potential division and satisfaction in the council performance. So I think this is has the potential to be a very good appointment, but it's significantly, though, it places the emphasis back on the council to determine the measures under which his performance is going to be assessed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazeman. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried.
Have a division, Madam Mayor.
Those in favour, we have Councillor Hazeman. Those in favour, we have those in favour, we have Councillor Padden.
Not going on the front page being the only one opposed.
Councillor Hazeman, Councillor... Sorry, we'll start again. All those in favour, all those in favour, I'll start again. In favour, we have Councillor Hazeman, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Abdullah, Councillor Giovanetti, Councillor Adam and Councillor O'Keefe. Those opposed, we have Councillor Summer, Councillor... Oh, sorry, what have I done? Sorry.
You only get one vote.
Change your vote.
Oh,
You don't get two votes.
I don't know where I've been the last 10 minutes.
Sorry. We just called a division, so we just needed to say who
That's
had
right.
voted for and who had voted against.
You can change your mind if you like.
Oh, you changed your vote. Sorry, okay.
One did. It was unanimous.
Did we get that right?
Unanimous anyway.
Okay. So they all put their hand up in favour.
Let the record show.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. It's the first time that's happened. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. We can move on. Wondering why you all had your hands up. All right, moving on. We'll now go to page 21, item 8.5, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 21. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Summer?
I will move that the council note tendered contracts awarded under delegated authority by the Chief Executive Officer, contracts awarded under delegated authority by a director, requests for tenders advertised but not yet awarded.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
We've gone from pages full of delegated contracts, and that was at the end of the financial year, to being very light on. So I think there might have been a bit of a rush and now there's a lull. This is a great little segment in the agenda because it does direct policy change in the end by improving transparency and accountability of the organisation. As an example, 1949, which is purchase of aquatic plants for Sevens Creek wetlands. I've been asking to get some kind of a rundown of capital spend and developer contributions in these development areas, usually prompted by its appearance in these tendered contracts under delegation. It does seem to be quite excessive amounts compared with other areas of the city, and this has again prompted me at the next briefing. I will be asking once again for a rundown of the capital spend at places such as Sevens Creek wetland. So it is a very important part because these usually wouldn't come to us. They're delegated under the CEO, and we need to be responsible for all of our purchases, not just what we've delegated to him.
Thank you, Councillor Summer. Councillor Giovannetti, would you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Summer's right in her assessment that it's great to actually see all of the contracts that are up, those that have been awarded, those that haven't. The one interesting one for me at the moment is that the design of the Maud Street Mall precinct redevelopment, which the tender closed on the 1st of May, and as yet we haven't seen anything about that, so I would sincerely like to see that comes up to us in the very near future so that matter can be dealt with.
Thank you very much. Any council wish to speak against the motion? Any council wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazeman?
Yeah, quite often it's an issue when you see a range of projects presented in this sort of format which doesn't tell the full story. It's just a snapshot. And in respect of, there was an item discussed around at Seven Creeks. It'd be interesting to have another column in there to show which of these types of items are being matched by a developer contribution plan to see there. So it's not a case of, council spending this money. We're in fact spending the developer's money with no contribution necessarily from the council. So when we have a discussion around this particular item every month, we're not actually, they've got all the full information in front of us to make that informed discussion.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 9, item 9.1, the Museum of Vehicle Evolution, known as MOVE, Shepparton. The recommendation is on page 27. Would the council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Giovannetti?
Councillor Summer had her hand up first, but I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 27 that states that the council provide financial support for the Museum of Vehicle Evolution, which is MOVE, project of up to 1.375 mil, including GST, subject to the project meeting all legal and planning requirements, and that we authorise the CEO to move a formal funding agreement with MOVE, which stipulates that council funds must be utilised for infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Summer. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Back last year, I happened to move the original motion, and the board of MOVE have come back to us with a change to the plan. Originally, our funds were to be committed on the basis that federal and state funding was to be made available prior to council utilising their funds. Things have changed. The MOVE board have actually received more funding from the public than what was first envisaged, and they believe that with federal government funding as well as council funding, plus the additional contributions from public trucking industry, etc., that they're able to go ahead with stage 1. Stage 2 relates to an addendum, I suppose, to the original proposal, which includes a, I'll just get this right, the Thompson
collection,
clothing exhibition, as well as one other item, which is the Maskell's project. And that'll be stage 2. Also part of stage 2 will be the installation of the solar panels, which is, I think most of us on council felt was a great concept, and that there will be money going back into the community from those panels. Now, I believe that the commitment has been made that the panels will go ahead no matter what. Stage 2 is because of the fact of these 2 new items that have come into the contract, and the panel, it's not worth putting the panels on sort of 3/4 of the building until we get the whole thing completed. So I think that the request from the Move board is fair and reasonable, and the CEO will be drawing up a funding and services agreement that will reflect council's thoughts on the project, and thoughts and requirements of the project.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be comparing this to a similar high-profile project to support my argument, which is obviously the new SAM. I think this project is a terrific example of how it should be done. Everyone involved has done an exceptional job, and they should all be congratulated. It's been in the pipeline since 2011, and I'm more than happy to support the council donation because grant funding timelines would be jeopardised if we don't offer the money today. It's a relatively modest project compared with SAM, requiring just $6.25 million in total. Nevertheless, visitor spend is expected to increase by $5.7 million per annum, with a total economic impact of $13.1 million. Unfortunately, the local content for SAM business case didn't stack up, but locals will have the skills necessary to construct the infrastructure required for Move, and this means a great many more local jobs. Donors have shown enormous community support. The board has already pledged over $1 million, which is more than they expected. This has allowed them to increase their donor target, not decrease, and also means that the state government funding may not be required at this stage, which is why we're moving this motion now. Move has a sustainable business model with a dedicated income stream through ticket sales, retail sales and corporate sponsorship, as well as over 100 volunteers, and they've also got a proven track record of increasing visitation by 11% since 2015. As Councillor Giovannetti said, the environmental component has not been cut, and the Move Board's history of innovation and expansion indicates to me that solar panels will eventuate in future stages, shouldn't be in question really. Unlike, in my opinion, Vic Park Lake, Move's location out at Emerald Bank is just spot on. There's land for expansion, it's an established tourist destination, and there's no impost on public space or traffic. Move doesn't just appeal to a niche market, it will attract families, older people, friends and relatives from out of town, as well as motor enthusiasts. I've already taken my kids out there and they love seeing the cars, trucks and vintage bikes. It's for locals and it tells our story. It has a heart and it comes from the ground up. So we've already mentioned the Thompson clothing collection, and the Furphy Museum speaks for itself. It will be on par with Bendigo's success with the Grace Kelly exhibition, I believe, and the trucking theme aligns perfectly with our identity as a region. So everyone who raised their hand in support of a $50 million art gallery is obviously very serious about tourism, heritage and attracting people to our region. So it would be hypocritical not to support this project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Summer, would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I just want to state from the beginning that I fully support this project, and I think all councillors did at the beginning. The only concern I've had, and I think councillors are aware of this, we've had discussions today about this, I'm just not that comfortable sometimes with the goalpost shifting. We obviously committed to give 1.35 million, including GST. Originally, that was based on or contingent upon Move securing 1.25 million from the state government. That didn't eventuate. That being said, the nature of these projects doesn't always go smoothly. We understand that. As Councillor Summer has mentioned, that the donations from the community were surpassed their expectations, and I think that's still continuing, which is good. But I just wasn't comfortable with that aspect of it. That being said, I think that can be addressed with the funding agreement and contract that our CEO is authorised to work out with Move. And I just want to make sure that the environmental component, which is the solar panels, which was a very attractive factor of the whole project to me, and I think some other councillors, I really need to be comfortable that will go ahead, and I am confident that will go ahead now. So having said that, I still fully support the project.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yes, the council endorsed funding contribution of 1.25 million ex-GST to the MOVE project, subject to the state and federal funding in place. The decision was made after carefully considering the economic, social and environmental benefits of the project, as illustrated by Councillor Summer, to Greater Shepparton and its alignment with the Greater Shepparton's strategy and vision. Now, the funding commitment was on the premise that apart from the economic and social benefits through increased visitation and job opportunities, the project will also bring environmental benefits by harnessing 1 megawatt of solar power and also with battery storage and vehicle charging stations. Now, since then, as I understand that there have been changes to project planning and funding arrangement, and as a result, the project has been staged, and it means that it no longer requires the no longer requires to wait for the state funding to commence construction. Hence, Council has been requested to approve its original funding without the previous clause of the Victorian government having to commit funding first. Now, I just want to make it very clear that there has been a very robust discussion at the Council about this request to do our due diligence, and queries were raised about risks to the project's stated outcomes, including the delivery of the environmental component, which is intended to contribute to the community, basically. So yes, going forward, I'll be supporting this project, but I will want to make sure that enough safeguards are in place, and Council will have to ensure that the funding agreement with MOVE includes the risk mitigation points as highlighted in the Council report around this project. And there are safeguards to ensure that the stated economic and environmental and social benefits are achieved. The oversight and monitoring of the KPIs of this funding agreement will ensure that Council's contribution will achieve the objectives. And yes, based on these arrangements, I will be supporting this recommendation and looking forward to MOVE's addition to Greater Shepparton's places of interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson.
I think it's caught all councils off guard a little bit how quick it's moving, and that's the difference between private enterprise and local and state government. It's a lot freer and easier in local, in private enterprise to get things up and going and make decisions and go and do it. And that's what this group of people have done, and I congratulate them. They're very passionate about it, totally support it. And I just looked down the track 2 years, and you know, when we have MOVE up and running, we also have SAM up and running, and we also have the hatchery, fish hatchery, which will have to be announced in the morning, up and running. That's a whole weekend's worth of visitation. You can come to Shepparton and spend those whole 3 days. There's something there for everyone. So fish and art and cars all do go together.
Very good.
Different markets, people will go to all more. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Would any council wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazeman.
Look, I think it's symptomatic of a lot of large projects that in the planning implementation stage you do get scope move. I think what's made it a lot easier in this case, though, to accommodate that scope move is the fact that the previous reliance on some state government contribution has been more than matched by the development of local donors who have contributed significantly to the project. That certainly has assisted my thinking on this matter. It's also interesting, look, this is the same with all philanthropic donations to large projects, is that fundraising at this stage is in the form of pledges, currently over $1 million. And that's the nature of this type of donation. People will donate and actually make the funds available at a time of their choosing when it's advantageous to them, whether it's for tax purposes or whatever. So it's very pleasing to see that the community has pledged that level of contribution, as indeed it is for the other project that was mentioned, that there's been a fantastic level of community support. That certainly does make it easier for the council to make the decision that it's making here tonight. And I'd agree with the commentary. This is going to be a fantastic benefit to the community. It's certainly going to provide various options for people in both tourism, local employment and generation of a benefit to our local economy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haseman. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 34, item 9.2, adoption of revised heritage grants guidelines. The recommendation is also on page 34. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the recommendation on page 34 as a motion that the council adopts the heritage grants guidelines 2019.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, quickly, just that the Heritage Grants Guidelines 2019, the main change is basically the allowance of an increase in the amount of grant funding available to each project. So in 2017-2018, this program was set up, and we should be proud of the fact that we are the first council to be having this program, grants, basically to motivate and give an incentive to our community to promote and support and conserve our heritage. So it's the program has been successful, and we have seen it in 2017 and 2018 and 2018-2019. The allocations have increased. The total allocations have increased from 25,000 to 50,000 last year, and now these guidelines are basically requiring that the grant funding available to each project, which is on a $1 for dollar matching arrangement, that amount be increased to $15,000 up to $15,000 per project. So yes, I'll be strongly supporting this guideline.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to make a comment?
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Summer.
Only to encourage businesses or anybody really who is considering renovation to take up this offer, because $1,500 is quite substantial, and the purpose of this is to try and build up whatever heritage we do have left in this region.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 38, item 9.3, the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee, nomination of community representatives. The recommendation is on pages 38 and 39. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah?
Yeah, I would like to move the recommendation on page 38 as a motion that the council declare the community representative positions for the Heritage Advisory Committee vacant, and having considered the nominations received for appointment to the Heritage Advisory Committee, resolve to appoint the following community representatives to the Heritage Advisory Committee for a term of 2 years, commencing on 17 July 2019 and concluding on 20th July 2021. And we have 6 nominations here.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so it's a normal, it's a standard process according to the terms of reference of Heritage Advisory Committee, and we have received nominations. These are all the existing, the current members, and their contribution to the committee has been enormous, and I'm pleased to see that Leah, Carrie Donaldson, David, Jeff, Andrew, and Robinsley, there's a recommendation for their reappointment. I have seen the passion for heritage and preservation of heritage in these members of the committee, and yes, looking forward to be working with them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, it's great to see the passion from a lot of people that are interested in heritage. It's very important that we keep our eye on it. Council is often accused of not keeping their eye on it. We weren't guilty of that big knocking a post office down, but we've always been abused and accused of doing it. It wasn't their fault. Well, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anyone's fault here, actually. Went down before you were 21.
Wasn't even the Council of the Day's fault.
No, that's what I mean. But it's always been compared to, and I think it's really good. There is a very strong commitment between from our ratepayers that they want to be seen and be active in maintaining what we've got. Because until you have a really good look, people don't realise the heritage we do have here still. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 43, item 9.4, the draft Greater Shepparton Heritage Strategy for 2019. The recommendations are on page 43 and 44. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Summer.
The recommendation point 2 and 3 as printed on pages 43 and 44.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Summer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Mayor, I could come under fire for moving this one because heritage seems to bring out different aspects of importance in different people. So this is simply to exhibit the draft, and this will be for a period of 5 weeks, and we do want people's feedback. So if it does impact on your property, either for better or for worse, please make a submission. You can support it or object to it. We will listen. It is a process that is important for us. It's a lot of hard work has gone into this, and I know some of the council staff are quite passionate about it themselves. So it could be controversial, but I can only put it out for consultation, see what comes back and make a decision then.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say that this draft heritage strategy. You're right. It's a process that we have to go through, and the draft has to be out there for community consultation. Well, the need for the heritage strategy is basically to tell us that why it is important to preserve heritage and what actions from us would help us implement this strategy. So this strategy is going to provide directions to the council about conservation and promotion of our local heritage, both tangible and intangible. So this draft strategy is also supported by an action plan with key action items and time frames around 5 key directions. So what are we going to do about making sure that we know our places of heritage? How are we going to protect it? How are we going to support it? Communicating and promoting those places and heritage, and also building capacity. So it's very important to first understand our directions and then go towards achieving that. So I'm glad that Council has invested significant effort in the development of this draft strategy. And of course, with the feedback from Heritage Advisory Committee, they have really worked hard. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the community feedback and hoping that this strategy would take us there where we want it to be and to preserve our heritage. Shepparton, Greater Shepparton has got some amazing places of heritage and history, and both tangible and intangible forms of history of heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Giovanetti?
you, Madam Mayor. As my fellow councillors will be aware, I'm probably philosophically opposed to parts of the heritage strategy, although I'm more than happy to support the release and exhibition of it. I still have concerns and have had numerous people contact me in relation to private properties and how the heritage strategy may or may not impact on them. I think that, as I said, philosophically, I think it's wrong that we as a council can demand that private owners of properties have to abide by this heritage strategy. I think it takes away the whole concept of owning your own home. But that being said, I'm happy to support the motion and I would urge any people within the municipality who have concerns to, as Councillor Summers said, to put them in writing and forward them to us, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Will any council wish to speak against the motion? Will any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I think I sort of half support Councillor Giovanetti in the whole concept of this subject. It's very complex, and in some instances it can actually impinge on the actual basic right of owning your own property and being the king of your own castle, so to speak. That being said... Sorry? Marbo. Yeah. It's the vibe. Yeah. That being said, I do recall the briefings on this particular subject, and I think I made it clear in the briefings to our officers that it's all very well releasing these documents for this draft document for public consultation, but I think feeds into what Councillor Giovanetti was saying. At the very least, the people who may possibly be impacted should be actually contacted directly, not just given the opportunity to view this document. They should be contacted directly, and I think that's been put into the actual plan. That way, at least we don't have any issues after the actual document is adopted, presumably if it does get adopted, because too many times we all as councillors we get contacted by many of our community who said we weren't aware of this or that or the other. That being said, hopefully it'll be done as we expect it to be done, and everyone can go into this with their eyes wide open. So that being said, I still support the actual motion.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Ozavari.
I've just made a mental note here. Well, actually, I've written it down. Don't let Captain Bulldozer chair Heritage Committee. There is a balance between heritage that should be maintained and some stuff that shouldn't, and that's what we want to hear from these people. There's old houses in town that would be criminal to knock them down. There's others, and when people buy those houses, they should be aware of that, and they know that they've got a responsibility to maintain that house. But there is other ones that we all look at and think, why would you save it? So that's what we want to hear from the community. So if they can please write to us and give us their thoughts, give us some guidelines what they believe should happen.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Can I just clarify you're actually speaking to the motion, not against it, because we did have a little jump in there, so you're still speaking to the motion, not against it, yeah? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Ozavari.
Look, essentially, I'm a little bit ambivalent about heritage. The things which are obvious of heritage worth jump out at me. The things that are less worthy of heritage ties in, I think, in terms of what a couple of my colleagues, fellow councillors, have said, particularly Councillor Giovanetti, in terms of, and it was really quite interesting because when I was walking to my car this afternoon prior to coming to council, I bumped into a person who shall remain nameless, but who had a property in Corio Street. And I got talking to him for a couple of minutes, and he had a very negative experience with this council. Unfortunate, and it cost him money. And you can never please everybody all the time, but you should be able to get a broad consensus. And I think these sorts of studies, and I know it's only going out for exhibition, they can be very invasive. And I think Councillor Adam touched on it briefly, that I've always had a view that a person's house is their castle, And I can guarantee you that very few people in this room could sit there and say, yes, look, I wouldn't be, I'd be happy for somebody to tell me what colour to paint my house and what I'd need to do to it to comply. So the message in this is that it's very important that people actually don't sit there with ambivalence, don't think it's going to not affect them, but actually take an active interest in it, read what it's about, and put something in if it's going to have a direct effect on them. Because ultimately what's going to happen, these things go out, they're listed, and subsequently for exhibition, and they miss their opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman.
It's interesting, we're having a fairly formal debate and the thing's only going out for exhibition.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it's interesting. I tend to agree with some of the commentary that these sort of guidelines need to be able to strike a balance. And if we go back to the one item that is always raised in Shepparton in respect of heritage, and it's the post office. So, but if we adopt the mantra that a person's home is their castle and they can do with it what they like, well, in that case, the owners of that building did do what they like. The Australian Postmaster General's office knocked it over without constraint, and we all think that's one of the biggest disasters we've ever seen in Shepparton in respect of our heritage. So balance is required between what's in the public good and what's impacting on an individual's rights in respect to their own property. And I think that's the purpose of guidelines such as this, is to try and provide that balance and to try and provide some direction to the community about how this council, reflecting community values, is imposing a policy.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 47. Item 10, reports from councillors, nil received. Item 11, reports from special and advisory committees, nil received. Item 12, notice of motion, amendment or rescission, nil received. Item 13, documents for signing and sealing. We have recommendation item 13.1, notice of acquisition. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Giovannetti.
Madam Mayor. Oh, sorry. Happy to move the recommendation as a motion on page 47. The council authorise the CEO to sign and seal the following documents. Notice of acquisition of land within Public Acquisition Overlay 23, specifically 25 Hawkins Street, 50 Ford Road and 221 New Merker Road.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This was discussed with us some time ago, and it relates to drainage catchment areas that are required because of subdivisions in that particular area, and what it's allowing us to do is to provide those catchment areas after we acquire these particular portions of land.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any council like to speak against the motion? Would any council like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 48, item 14.1, Councillors' Community Interaction and Briefing Program. The recommendation is on page 49. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Adam?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll move the recommendation on page 49. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
We say the same thing most months. It's just a log of all the different events that councillors have attended. Having said that, it's a great opportunity for councillors to engage with the community. Probably one of the best, actually, vehicles for that function, and it's most councillors make well use of it, so it's pretty good. That's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 50, item 15, urgent business not included on the agenda. We have nil received. Item 16, confidential management reports. We have item 16.1, which is designation of confidentiality of information. We have a recommendation also on page 50. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 50. I won't read it out. It's quite long at this time of night.
It's 3 lines, 2.5 lines.
Yeah.
We probably do need to read that one out.
Okay.
Pursuit of section 82-2...
89 actually, but it doesn't matter. It's all right. It's 89.
Okay, you know. Oh, sorry. What didn't you say?
That's all, I can read it out. So the recommendation that pursuant of section 89(2)(d) of the Local Government Act 1989 that the council meeting be closed to members of the public for consideration of a confidential item and declare the item confidential. So we do need... Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. And we do ask those in the gallery to please leave the meeting. Thank you very much.